Welcome to the Putback, presented by Fanatics Sportsbook. On today's show, we've got Stefan Bondy of the New York Post, James Edwards of The Athletic. Both these guys are with the Knicks every day. They're giving you a ton of great insight. We get into Mike Brown. We get into expectations, Karl Anthony Towns, the end of the roster. Of course, Giannis. We hit it all in this first episode. Hey guys, excited to announce our new partnership with Fanatics Sportsbook. We're going to be working with them throughout the year to bring new, exciting content to the show and share with you guys why they are America's fastest growing online sportsbook. One of the biggest reasons is fan cash, the ultimate sports currency. When you bet with Fanatics Sportsbooks, you get up to 10% fan cash back on your wagers, win or lose. And you can use that fan cash on anything in the Fanatics universe. So be sure to go ahead and check that out. You could download the app today, Fanatics Sportsbook. Winning hits different here. Must be 21 plus. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Connecticut, call 888-789-7777. Massachusetts, call 800-327-5050. New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY. Maryland, visit mdgamblinghelp.org. Not available in all states. Terms apply. See Fanatics Sportsbook app. Welcome to the Putback here on SNY.TV. I'm SNY's NBA insider, Ian Begley. Got two great guests with me today to preview the season. Got James Edwards of The Athletic, Stefan Bondy of the New York Post. Both those guys cover the Knicks every day, so we have a lot to get into. We're going to get into Mike Brown, Karl Towns, that last roster spot, so much more. But as always, we are going to get started with the baseline. And our baseline today is on Mike Brown. His effect so far. We want to know what's new, what's different, and what can fans expect. And James and Steph have spent a lot of time around Mike Brown. Steph spent time with him in Abu Dhabi, across the world. So we've got some insight so far into what this might look like. But Steph, I want to start with you, man. What are your expectations here for Brown and how it's going to work out?
Well, I mean, the expectations overall for this team are NBA Finals. I think that was established when they got to the conference finals and then fired the coach because they thought that wasn't good enough. So, my expectation, though, is that it's going to start off a little rocky. I think when you're trying to introduce a new offense, especially when your idea is to take the ball out of the point guard's hands when the ball has been in his hands for basically 3 years and he's been running the show, and now you're saying he's going to be off the ball. I think there's going to be an adjustment period. So, maybe they start off a little slow. But I think overall, this team is going to be judged by what happens in the playoffs. And it kind of the path was cleared with the injuries to Jason Tatum and Tyrese Halliburton for the Knicks to make a run to the NBA Finals. And I think that's the expectation internally for this team.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think externally, too, again, when you do fire Tom Thibodeau coming off that conference finals appearance, you're either playing in June this year or you're not. If you are, great. If not, it didn't work. So, James, I'm wondering, how have you seen Mike Brown's impact on the group thus far?
The ball's moving side to side a bit more. I think that they're trying to play faster. They're not trying to be as stagnant. Also, through 3 preseason games, they shot close to 150 threes. I think in the game against Minnesota, they were somewhere between 50 and 55. This team just didn't do that last year. They're not shooting the ball well, and I don't have a concern on that level with everybody that's not shooting well. Like Karl Anthony Towns hasn't made a 3 yet. I'm not worried about that. He has a long history of making threes. Do I have some concerns about that he's only taken 5? Yeah, that's different, right? So it's a group that's going to play different. They're going to try to get the 3 ball up. I question if this is a high volume 3-point shooting team. I think they've been accurate last year on low attempts, but they don't have a lot of kind of high volume guys. So I'm curious to see how this works out. But I do think they're going to play a lot faster. I think we've seen it. We've seen the ball moving. And even defensively, Mitch was saying it's a lot different than what they're used to. It's not man to man. It has zone principles. So there's some adjustment there as well.
Yeah, going to be a big adjustment, as both of you guys noted. And I'm curious to see what this offense looks like early on and what the pace is, actually. I know that, you can manipulate some numbers, but pace is pace, and the Knicks want to play fast. I just wonder if they have the personnel to do that. They have some guys who can push the ball. Obviously, you can push it off a rebound. But in general, just looking up and down this roster, it doesn't strike me as a roster that's going to get up and down for 48 minutes and really push things. Let's see how it works out. And Steph, for you, Jalen Brunson, you mentioned off the ball. Mike Brown, Jalen Brunson, obviously Tom Thibodeau very close with Jalen Brunson, not there anymore. Mike Brown here. What have you learned? What have you made of that point guard head coach relationship so far?
I mean, I think it's been good. I think that there's an idea of what they want to do together, and Jalen Brunson has bought into that. I think when it comes down to it, the idea that you're going to play fast is more so about playing different. And the Knicks had, I think, the 5th rated offense in the NBA last year. So you're not going to kill what they did efficiency wise. The problem is when they got to the playoffs and they became predictable and they became easy to defend. And I remember talking to somebody associated with the Oklahoma City Thunder, and they were like, we would much rather see the Knicks in the finals than the Pacers. And that was because the Knicks are easier to defend while the Pacers play a bunch of different ways. So I think this is about variety. And if you play different ways, and Jalen Brunson is off the ball for the first 3 quarters, you kind of conserve his energy as well. And then once you get to the 4th quarter, you're just going to go to your bread and butter, which is Jalen Brunson, cat, pick and roll, and just go from there.
Yeah, James, I thought you asked a great question the other night because you were referencing how, teams schemed against the Knicks last year, schemed against that starting 5 with Karl Towns and Josh Hart, big on Josh Hart, a wing on Karl Towns. You saw it in the playoffs too. And you were referencing a play where the Knicks didn't set up in anything. They more so pushed the ball and got something off the live dribble. And Mike Brown said, that's 100% what I'm looking for. What have you seen in terms of those opportunities, and how does that look different from maybe what we saw last year?
Yeah, I think Steph made a great point. I don't necessarily think when we hear fast, I don't think we're going to mean they're going to be Tyrese Halliburton up the floor. I've been looking. There have been times when they've broken half court within like 21 seconds, which is like a major improvement too, right? But I think when you talk about playing faster, it's getting the ball moving side to side, just not sitting there and dribbling splinters out of the hardwood. And I think that group got a little too used to that last year because they did have success, and they knew at the end of the day they were just more talented than most of the teams they faced. And yeah, the offense was ranked 5th, so we can't kill the efficiency, but it was pretty bad and pretty average from January 1st on. And they just struggled, even when it was good, they struggled against defenses that were good, right? Like teams that had multiple versatile defenders. They just got very stagnant. So I think Brown's biggest thing when playing fast, yes, he'd like to get them up and down the court quicker, but getting the ball moving, like just not letting it stick. And I think that's a way when you're watching it and observing, they're playing faster.
That's a great point. Great point. So it's not necessarily the pace, bottom line pace, but you watch how they move in the half court. Maybe that's faster. And, everything is very positive in preseason. Everybody's 0-0. And so I think it's hard to make much of Mike Brown's, impact off the court on the locker room. But, everybody's talked about how communication has been there. Mike Brown's first conversations with these guys were about life, had nothing to do with basketball. So he's obviously made an effort to connect with everybody on the roster. And to me, that's a big thing. It's something that you can't quantify, but if there's trust built there over this season between Mike Brown and the top players on the team, then, I think it's going to show itself on the floor. Mikal Bridges talking the other night about how he's going to hold you accountable, Mike Brown. I've heard he's gotten loud at times with some of the top players on the team in terms of correcting mistakes. And Mikal Bridges said that's what we need. He does it in a respectful way. And Bridges was talking about how he appreciates that. So just something interesting to note there so far with Brown. But let's get to, guys, the starting 5, which is, what we love to talk about, what we love to guesstimate. And we've seen the starters so far with the 2 bigs, Mitchell Robinson, Karl-Anthony Towns. Steph, do you think that's the way they go against Cleveland next Wednesday?
Yeah, I mean that's been every indication is that's the way they're going to go. Josh Hart, unfortunately, got hurt in the second quarter of the opening preseason game, and we haven't seen him since. So um, Mike Brown has gone with that double big lineup anytime he had the opportunity, and I think what you're going to see in Game 1 is that lineup with uh, Mitchell Robinson at center, Karl Anthony Towns at power forward. I think that optimizes the defense more than anything. And they're going to be an elite rebounding team with that lineup.
Steph, I just want to say thank you for checking in from the Maybach. I really appreciate I know it's
Maybach,
tough
yeah,
on
right.
the road.
My Toyota
I appreciate it,
2020
brother.
Corolla.
Thank you. And James up at the Knicks practice facility, I should say, too, in Tarrytown. I'm going to talk to Mike Brown and some of the players after practice. James, for you, is that the best starting lineup that this team can offer?
That's a great question, right? I think it probably gives them the best balance. Like Steph said, to me, starting Mitch mitigates a lot of the defensive worries that you have with the other four. Not obviously OG and Mikal, but Jalen and Kat. They both try defensively, but there are physical limitations there. And then offensively, you're getting offensive rebounds. You have another big screener out there. So, yes, would maybe Deuce McBride help the offense more than the defense? Sure. Would Josh also bring a bit of a balance? Sure. But we've seen what that looked like. Could it be different with a different coach? Of course. So I definitely think that is the way they go. I think it probably, brings the best balance. I have questions about putting the ball in Mitch's hands as much as it seems like they're going to do. And even Mike, when he was asked about it the other day at practice, I think it was practice, he said he even came in with like some concerns, like, am I going to put the ball too much in his hands, make him do too much decisions, like as a DHO guy, as a hub at times. And he said he's been impressed with what he's seen so far, but it was something that he's going to keep monitoring. So I'm curious how it impacts the offense. But defensively, I agree. I think it just probably helps mitigate some of the most obvious limitations.
I wonder, too, with Karl Anthony Towns, you mentioned it, James, the amount of three-pointers. It's just preseason. You don't want to read anything into it, certainly not too much into it. But his looks, I wonder how his looks change if they do go that way with Towns at the 4, Robinson at the 5. And Mike Brown has hit on this point several times. He's talked about how with Karl Anthony Towns and Gershon Yabusele, they have the toughest adjustment to make because those guys have to know the 4 and the 5 positions in these new schemes, offensively, defensively. And for Mike Brown, if you're at the 4, you have to also know the other positions on the court, 1 to 3. So a lot is being put on Karl Anthony Towns and Yabusele early on. I mean, Brown has almost mentioned it every time we bring one of those guys up. So that's a point of emphasis for him, something to keep an eye on early in the season as the Knicks start to get used to each other. But with Towns, Bonds, how do you expect it to be different at the power forward position? Better, worse, the same?
Well, I think, I think it worked out in Minnesota.
Yep.
I think that they're going to be a better defensive team, and I think that was a big issue. Listen, we're talking about the offense over and over again, the speed and the pace. The problem with this team last year was really the defense. They were an average defensive team for much of the year, and a lot of that is because Karl Anthony Towns was at center, and he was put in a position where he's not a great rim protector, and the Knicks lost that element. So I think by moving him to power forward, the Minnesota Timberwolves, when he was in that position, were one of the top defenses in the NBA. I think it optimizes the defense, and I think, offensively, Karl Anthony Towns is such a talent that he'll find a way. I'm a little bit concerned about this idea that they're going to just run and gun and play speedball because Karl Anthony Towns, to me, just doesn't strike me as that type of player physically, and Gershon Yabusele as well. So I'm interested to see how that all plays out. But he's now year 10 in the NBA. I mean, the guy's going to figure out a way to score. He was an All NBA talent last year, and I expect him to be on that level again offensively.
Yeah, no question. James, also, when you look at kind of the heart injury, we know it's the back. We know that he wasn't playing the other night. I think it was because they just Mike Brown wanted to sit him. It's not clear to me whether he could have played or not. Do you expect him on Friday?
I'm going to say I'm not reporting anything. I'm going to say no. Maybe they get him an extra preseason game. Listen, I think it sounds like he just started doing on-court stuff the other day. We know and love Josh. He's not a fan of practicing, right? Like that's publicly known. And like, all right, I'm not speaking out of turn. Like that's a public,
No,
like I think a
you
publicly
said it.
known thing. Yeah.
Preseason too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, listen, maybe they get him a game if he's feeling all right, just to like let him get some game reps in before they just throw him in the fire in Cleveland. But I mean, last update we got is he didn't practice and he was doing on court stuff. So, Steph and I will find out here hopefully in less than an hour if he practiced today.
And you guys remember, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't he have like 0 points in preseason last year? Like it was crazy how bad he was.
Yeah,
he was
did
like
not shoot it well.
He was at the point where he was like, dude, just take me out of the starting lineup.
Yes.
And then
I forgot about that.
And then he had like he set the record for triple doubles in a season for the Knicks. So I wouldn't read too much into Josh Hart's preseasons.
That's a very fair point. There is history there.
I forgot about that.
That was funny. I remember that was a big story coming out of that last preseason game. You know, OG Anunoby, Mitchell Robinson, Mikal Bridges in that starting unit. We talked about offense, talked about defense, but Bridges specifically, James, what do you think you'll see from him year 2 here in New York?
I asked Brown this the other day. Will we see him as kind of the exclusive point of attack defender? And he said not exclusive, but he does really like him there because he does it really well, right? So I'm fascinated to see the season Mikal has. We've all talked about how there were struggles last year, right? He's talked about how there were struggles. Is he going to be able to be aggressive and be that point of attack defender they need him to be every single night, right? That's a question I have, right? That's a lot of screens. This guy has a lot of miles on his body. I think last year he got hit with more screens than anybody in like modern NBA history, if I'm not mistaken, since they started tracking it. Like that's a tough job, and I imagine Mike Brown will switch it up a little bit more. On the offensive end, you want to see the shot be what it had been in the past. He could hit corner threes last year, could not hit above the break threes. I want to say 30% or worse on those. They need him to make open shots. We haven't really seen any mid-range jumpers yet this preseason. He's gotten to the hole a few times, gotten to the free throw line. I asked Brown if that was a conversation they had. He said not necessarily, but I think just he thought it was something that would naturally come from the offense. And I think Mikal at least has attempted to alter his game a little bit here in the preseason.
Yeah, you mentioned that getting to the rim, and that's what we didn't see last year. You have seen it a few times early on. Got a note from producer extraordinaire Sam Kendall. Sam notes that Josh Hart had 2 points in 90 minutes during last year's preseason. He was 1 of 6 from the floor, 0 of 5 from 3. So yeah, we can throw out any Josh Hart preseason stats or performances, throw them out the window. And guys, the big one here for the Knicks over the next few days is kind of the end of the roster and what happens there, because they've got decisions to make on Landry Shamet, Malcolm Brogdon, Garrison Matthews. They have the second apron to deal with. It's going to be an interesting dance to see how they sort through this. You know, there's that Saturday deadline for them to make decisions on Shamet, Brogdon, Matthews, and the other veterans on contracts, but specifically those 3 guys. And so I want to get into like the Shamet, Brogdon, Matthews triad there. And if you guys were sitting there, you're Frank Zanin, you're Brock Aller, you're William Wesley, you're Leon Rose, you're debating this thing. Which way are you going? Are you going 1 vet, 2 vets? Are you going to make a trade to open up that spot? What are you doing?
You want to go, Steph, or you want me to go?
Go ahead. You go first.
So this is a situation where, as we've gotten closer, I continue to ponder what's going to happen on Saturday. I think Knicks fans should brace for the possibility of them having to attach a second-round pick to whichever young player that they trade. I I'm talking to teams throughout the league. I know you guys have talked to teams too. I think that's kind of the consensus around the league is that they're going to have to trade. If they make a trade, they're going to have to attach something to it. Teams know what they're trying to do. The young players don't really have that much value around the league. And I would say that Washington first-round pick, obviously, which will be 2 seconds, is off the table. But probably the second or third best second-round pick they have might be on the table. And they have a boatload of second-round picks, right? So it's not going to be great asset management. I wonder if that's smart because they don't have much stuff to throw out there. If this doesn't work with this team and they need to go make a Giannis trade, right? Like they don't. I don't know if I'd necessarily trade even the best of my second-round picks. And I'm not sure that I would even punt on somebody like Pacome for the 11th, 12th man. With that said, I understand they're in a championship window. And you need to be able, like these guys, whoever makes these last 2 spots are going to be like plug and play guys, especially the last one. Like I need you in a pinch to be able to produce. And for me, I'm looking at somebody like Garrison Matthews. I think Brogdon gets the open one that's current. I think if they open up another one, it's going to be, I would go Garrison Matthews. I think he's a slightly better shooter than Shamet. I think he has a quicker release. I don't think he's a bad defender. I don't think he's as good as Shamet, right? But I think if you told me in a random game against Houston in February and you give Garrison Matthews 10 minutes, is there a world where I could see him having like 12 points? I think there is. Shamet's loved in the locker room. Guys rooting for him. But I like what I've seen from Garrison. And again, we don't get to see everything, but I like what I've seen from Garrison.
Steph, how about you? How are you playing it?
Yeah, I mostly agree with that. I think that first of all, they need a backup point guard. I thought that was one of their priorities throughout the summer, and which shows you that they don't think that Tyler Kolek is ready. So I think Malcolm Brogdon does get a spot there. And then if I were to choose between Garrison Matthews and Landry Shamet, I would probably go Landry Shamet. He's just safe option. You know what you're getting there. The consummate professional. He cracked the rotation in the playoffs because of that, because he plays defense and he can be a reliable option. You know what you're getting there. And as far as who to trade, I think that showcasing Pacome Dadier here in the preseason has not worked out for the Knicks. I think it had a negative impact because he has not played well. And I'm with James. I think you might have to attach assets just to get off your players in order to create the space, and then you're questioning whether that's worth it. I know part of the problem is you've communicated to these players, and I'm talking to the players on non-guaranteed deals, that they're going to have a realistic shot here. So you don't want to, alienate some of your relationships around the league. You don't want to attach draft assets to the draft picks that you've made. That also looks bad. So the Knicks do not have an easy solution here.
One of the things that I think about is, we talked about the idea if you trade Tyler Kolek to a team with cap space, a Utah or a Brooklyn, you can add a second veteran, whether it's Shamet Brogdon or Shamet Matthews or whatever the combination is, but you wouldn't have enough to go ahead and sign a free agent during the season, which is something that the Knicks did last year with PJ Tucker. And I believe they would like to do this year if they're able. But the interesting thing there is if you moved Kolek and then you waited a bit you maybe asked Shamet or asked Brogdon or asked Diawara to wait for a little bit, 2 weeks to sign, and then maybe you have some more money available under that second apron, maybe that gets you closer to being able to sign that guy during the season. So just another wrinkle there in terms of who they might trade and what it might mean. And, the Miles McBride stuff, I think that it would have to be a massive offer in terms of what they would want back. You want back at least a first. I think you're starting there on Miles McBride, and I just don't see that happening at all right now. And so, yeah, it would be Dadier or Kolek, or maybe they surprise us all and they do nothing. They keep one of those guys and they don't make a trade. But I think there's a world where they do something where they can wait a couple weeks to create some space before signing somebody, one of these guys, and maybe that's a way to gain some flexibility. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out. Obviously, Saturday.
I do know. I don't mean to cut you off, but I do know I've heard that there's some internal talk about they want to recoup some of the draft capital that they lost. They want draft capital. Now, could that be because they want to make a play at Giannis? I don't know, but I know that that's something that's been talked about inside the organization.
Yeah, I think externally too, they've talked to teams about getting a pick in some deals, and that was my takeaway too from that, Steph, was that you want a draft pick to go ahead and to be able to make a big deal, like if Giannis becomes available. So yeah, that's an interesting note. And you talked to
Can I,
Garrison Matthews. Oh, go ahead, James.
I was going to say, can I, if you don't mind, can I add to that?
Please.
Excuse me, still got my sexy morning voice.
Oh.
So that's the thing, right? So I think that's why we have maybe heard Deuce's name in rumors. That would be the one situation where they're getting in assets as opposed to having attach an asset, right? But I'm not sure. Again, I think it's fair to read into some preseason stuff. I think it's fair not to read into anything. I don't know that if a team that's went out publicly and said we have to win a championship, if trading their 1A, 1B bench piece is smart. And I don't think that necessarily the guards that they've brought in the preseason have warranted them being able to take over for what McBride does. So I think it's going to be, again, I think it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting. And Bondy, you touched on the relationship piece with the Knicks and agents, and I do think that's what they communicated, that these guys are going to have a real shot to compete for a spot. I don't think they guaranteed anybody anything, although I have to think a guy like Malcolm Brogdon is not coming here without a strong idea that he's got a chance to make it. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Guys, we're going to shift now to Storylines, which is presented by Fanatics Sportsbook. With the season around the corner, taking a look at some futures, specifically the Knicks championship odds. And from now up until October 16th, you can get a 20% profit boost to use on all NBA futures with Fanatics Sportsbook. Knicks currently at plus 900 to win the title. They're behind the Thunder, the Nuggets, Cavs, Thunder 220, Nuggets 750, Cavs 800. Who has to pop in your mind, James? Or what has to really work well for this team to get to the finals and then maybe get over the hump there?
Man, I think there's a few things, right? Can this team be both a high volume and efficient 3-point shooting team? Can it mitigate some of its defensive things? Can Mikal take that step another year in New York? And I'm going to knock on wood, not for just this team, but for every team in the NBA. Cleveland and New York were very healthy last year. And I think that was huge for their continuity. I think that was huge for, obviously, the playoff run, as teams that they faced all had injuries. Detroit had Jaden Ivey and Isaiah Stewart. Obviously, Boston ended up having Jason Tatum. So you hope that good health. We always talk about this. They must win. There's so many factors that play into it.
Right. Yeah, that's all great points, James. Steph, for you, what's one or two things that really has to work for this team to get to where it wants to be?
I mean, Mikal Bridges has to be better than he was last season. I think when you trade 5 first-round picks for a guy, you're expecting a legitimate all-star candidate. And if he makes that leap, the Knicks are in a different stratosphere. I like what I've seen from his shot. You know, a year ago, we were talking about this guy has a hitch in his shot, and he can't hit anything. I think his form is a lot smoother. I like what I've seen from him in preseason. And if he takes a big leap, I think the Knicks are in a different category.
Yeah, I go there too with Bridges, and I go there because I look at him and Anunoby and Robinson. If those guys are in the starting lineup, and I think that the Knicks are going to have to figure out a way. You know, you're not going to be a great defensive team, but figure out a way with those three and maybe another combination of McBride or somebody else to get reliable stops down the stretch of close games. I think that's something that we didn't see a lot of last year. But if Mike Brown and defensive coordinator Brendan O'Connor can figure out how to mix and match and get the defense to a place where you can get stops when you need them down the stretch of close games, to me that's a big thing. And then, more broader is defining roles. Do the roles get defined distinctly for these players up and down the roster? If they do the guys buy in to those defined roles? Are they all in on team above self. I think that that got into the locker room a little bit last year in an unhealthy way. If that stays out of the locker room, I think this team can be very good. So we'll see how it shakes out. Friday, last preseason game, then they get things started against Cleveland on Wednesday. But we're going to go stargazing right now. We're going to go stargazing because Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Knicks were linked a week ago. And Steph, you had 2 trade proposals in an article on Post Plus. And if you're not subscribed to Post Plus, go ahead and do that because Steph gives you great insight and information with Post Plus. But Steph, what were your 2 trade proposals? What did you like? What do you think might work?
Oh man, you're making me try to remember this dude on the spot. I can't.
My bad. All right, let me ask this:
Yeah.
was it Cat or was it something else as the main?
Cat was involved. So the one trade was just straight up trade, and it was under the idea that the Bucks didn't want to rebuild; they wanted to continue for a playoff push, and they took back Cat and they took back Mikal Bridges, and the Knicks would have to take on Kyle Kuzma's contract because that's a bad contract. And obviously they got Antetokounmpo, but that was under the premise that the Bucks didn't, they were still going to go for it. The other trade was they're going to rebuild, and I had to bring the Spurs into the mix. And then the Bucks would end up getting Stephen Castle and a bunch of first-round picks. The Knicks would have to take on Devin Vassell. They'd have to take on Kyle Kuzma and also get Giannis Antetokounmpo. So that trade was a little bit more complicated. But listen, I think, any trade that's going to involve Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Knicks is going to be complicated.
Yeah, certainly. James, for you, obviously so much depends on what happens on the floor.
Right.
But if this team is, winning at a decent clip and things go sideways in Milwaukee and it's late January, what would be the impetus for you to make the call, and what would you say? I'm not going to make the call. I'm good with this team. Like, does it just depend on how much they're winning? You have to project obviously into the future, a few months down the line. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I would say both sides would have to be in like a crash course type of situation here for something to happen in season. It's just so hard to do in-season trades, let alone with somebody of that magnitude. And they would have to bring in a third team because I can't. Listen, maybe Milwaukee wants to try to win on the fly. I think there's a way to do that and still get first-round picks or young guys. And I just think the Knicks can't. The Knicks obviously can't offer that without another team. So you're talking about a 3-team trade with one of the best players in the NBA in the middle of the season. Things would have to go terribly south for both teams to really hone in on that. And we'd probably have to know that it's going terribly south by early December, right? Or mid-December.
Right.
And if I'm New York, and I've heard throughout my time here in 2 years, and I'm sure you guys have heard it, I think there was a appetite to go star hunting here. That I think is kicked down the can is kicked down the road a bit because Giannis just wasn't available and Embiid's health is whatever. And so they found a way to pivot, and they've put together a very intriguing starting 5 with a very intriguing 7-8 guys in their rotation. So if you're New York, I think you just have to ride this out and at the very least revisit it in the summer. I just think you've done such a good job of putting yourself in a position where you have a very I don't want to say deep team, but a team that can contend even when people are healthy. You put yourself in this position, right? So I wouldn't want to mess with that unless things just go terribly south.
Yeah, I think you have to see what you have here. I totally agree. I'm going to repeat myself. The 2 things I'm going to say all year long, from talking about coaching, my opinion that Tom Thibodeau deserved the chance to coach this team this season in a fair and just NBA world. He'd be the coach, but the Knicks decided to move on. I think Mike Brown is going to handle this well, and we'll see what happens in late spring. But the other thing with Giannis is there's so many hurdles to cross. He basically has to figure out a way to coerce Milwaukee to send him to New York. That's really the only way this thing works because so many other teams can beat that Knick offer, whatever it ends up being. So there really has to be some behind-the-scenes machinations where the Bucks decide to work with Giannis. Giannis, uses the leverage of that extension coming as a way to force his way to New York. Other than that, I just can't see it. So we shall see. First few
All right,
weeks.
hold on.
What, yeah.
What if they start like 10-15?
Okay.
You know the media. You know it's going to start. The drum is going to start beating. You've been here before, Beck.
Oh, yeah.
They're not
Yeah.
going to fire. They're not going to fire the coach. That would have been the solution if Thibodeau was still the coach. But then they just hired Mike Brown. I
Yep.
think then we start hearing like a lot more rumors if it gets to that point. But also like you said, a lot of hurdles have to be cleared, and the Bucks have to be willing partners. And if they're struggling and the Knicks are struggling, I could see a world where this happens.
10 and 15. Man, I think the city is going to be on fire if the Knicks start 10 and 15. It's going to be your back pages are going to be amazing stuff.
That could be third seed in the East, though.
Oh, the East is that bad. The East is that bad.
Really. We're looking back to when the Knicks brought in a star in Jalen Brunson. Marc Cuban was on Pablo Torre's Pablo Finds Out podcast, which, before I get to Marc Cuban's quote, Pablo has done a fantastic job on the Kawhi story. He's been all over it. He's doing journalism the right way. So hats off to Pablo. It's been fantastic to watch. And Marc Cuban was saying that, was I happy that the Knicks only got dinged for a second round pick? No, should have been far worse. That's in reference to the Knicks getting a second rounder taken away after the NBA investigated them for improprieties in that Jalen Brunson free agency. So Pablo's kind of hinted at it a couple times with the Brunson and the Knicks having a similar set of circumstances to Kawhi. But Marc Cuban, I don't know, man, just say it or don't say it, because the innuendos, the hinting. If you have something to say it respectfully, or don't, because it just leaves everybody in a weird place. If you're saying, I thought they should have been penalized more because there was other stuff. Well, what was it? So that's how I see it. I don't know. How did you guys react to that?
All right, so I like Marc Cuban. I think that he's gracious with the media, and I appreciate that. But at the time, I remember this because I spoke to him about it that summer. At the time, he was like, "Oh, I don't think the Knicks did anything wrong," and he was trying to back away from it. And then I'm hearing, from behind the scenes that the Mavericks were the ones pushing the NBA to investigate. So now he's just been talking himself in pretzels at this point, and it's been a lot of that from him in this whole Clippers saga. And you're right. If you're going to accuse somebody of something, just do it. If not, you probably should just shut up.
There you go. James, we're going to hit some questions from fans now in a segment we like to call the Talkback. And in the Talkback, we bring in my friend and yours, Matt Spendley. He's going to join us. He's going to relay some fan questions. We're going to get right into it. Matt, thanks for being with us.
Of course. What's going on, guys? Let's get right into it. So I want to start with the motivator, Sporty Spice on Twitter. I'm going to hit all you guys on this one. So, James, I'll start with you. I'll go left to right on my screen. What's one underrated storyline about the Knicks that we are not talking enough about as we approach the season?
That's a great question. I've been talking about it a lot, and I know people, especially the last night, people were telling me to shut up. It's preseason. I like what the Knicks have done to address their depth in terms of their limited financials. I question whether those guys will actually be impactful. That's kind of I wonder about the bench. Yeah, I wonder about the bench, and it's something to monitor. Yabusele and Clarkson both came from organizations where winning was not the priority. In Yabusele's case, somebody had to score in Philly. Clarkson, his efficiency has dipped a bit, right? Is that because he was in Utah, or is that because he's about to turn 33? So I that's something I'm monitoring this season.
Sure. Ian?
I would go a bigger picture because be the motivator who I really like her Knicks opinions on Twitter. There's so much good stuff on Knicks Twitter. The passion is unmatched, but she didn't say this season. So the one thing that I think about that's not really talked about is bigger picture. You have Mitchell Robinson, pending free agent. You have Miles McBride, extension eligible December 30th. How do you find a way to pay both of those guys market value, what they're worth, and still field a competitive roster in this second apron era of the NBA. I think that's something that's kind of staring the Knicks in the face, not this year, but beyond. And I don't know if there's a way to do it. And if there's not a way to do it, where do you go from there? So that to me is just one of the interesting kind of sub stories as the Knicks go through. And how does Robinson look? How does McBride play? What does that mean for their markets? And what can the Knicks do? And what can they not do there?
Sure. Big roster questions loom. Steph, how about you? We'll close this out.
Yeah, sure. I did want to say one thing about Deuce's extension, because I did check on it a while ago, and I trust everything Bobby Marks tells me, and he said that he cannot sign an extension until July. I know it's supposed to be 2 years after he signs the contract, but for some reason Bobby said he can't do it until July. So get something there, and then I would have gone with something different until I saw that last preseason game, but I'm gonna go with James and that bench, because that bench did not look good. And I know it's just preseason, and I'm not overreacting, but it did not look good, and I am a little bit concerned about, we talk a lot about this team's depth and the talent that they brought in, and that is unquestionable. They're going to be better than last season, but how much better? I am questioning that.
Sure. Time will tell. All right, Ian, one more. Speaking of some of the bench guys, KNYT Hoops on Twitter, our guy. Hey, Ian, do you know what the Knicks could realistically get back for Paco Ndadier or Deuce McBride if they were to make a move involving one of them? So I know we've talked about some of the trade stuff already, but our guy KNYT is asking specifically what they could expect to get back.
For sure. I think McBride said it earlier. I think it starts with a first-round pick, and then you go from there. I think that's what the conversations would be about. With Dadier, it's different. As Steph noted, he has not played particularly well this preseason, and as he's gotten those opportunities. So the Knicks have to add a second rounder to move him to a Utah or a Brooklyn, a team with cap space that can absorb his deal and give the Knicks what they're looking for financially. That might be the case. And so I know that everybody who's watching Pacome, I've heard of, at least two teams that, were worth saying to themselves, we want to keep an eye on him. We want to see what it looks like. But after the preseason, I just don't know. So I would assume Knicks would either get just financial flexibility back for Dadier, or they may have to attach a pick to get what they want.
Sure. And then some of that will become clear as we approach Saturday. The Knicks have to make some roster decisions. Okay, my final one for you guys is the Knicks released their statement edition jerseys this morning. My question is, have you guys seen them? And if you have, what do you think of them?
I think they're cool. Yeah, black jersey. It's hard to mess up a black jersey. I like it.
I have not seen them, and I don't care, but I will say this. It does matter what James Dolan thinks, because a few years ago they brought back like a throwback jersey, and they were popular, but James Dolan didn't like them, and then they never wore them again. So we'll see what he thinks.
We'll see then.
There was a year too where they had orange jerseys, and I think they played the Hawks, and it looked like they were wearing the same color jersey as the Hawks during that game. So that was
the tomato game, and the Knicks also believe did not win a game in those jerseys, and then wore them again as a result.
Right. That's right. I'm with Steph. I don't care. I'm too old to care about jerseys, but or how they look, I should say. But I having a son who is now 6 years old, I'm starting to relearn how important jerseys are. He wants to get a different jersey every day of the week. So I'm sure when he sees this one, he's going to talk about where can we get it. So thank you, NBA. Thank you, Knicks, for forcing that on my bank account. But the uniforms, fans either, some love them, some hate them. There's always a split opinion, and people obviously buy them because they keep doing it.
Cool. All right. That's what I got.
Thank you, Matthew. Guys, we're going to wrap up here quickly on the Eastern Conference. I want to know who is let's forget about Cleveland for a second and the Knicks. Who do you look at beyond those two as a team to watch in this conference?
Go ahead, Steph.
I'm gonna go with obviously Orlando. They weren't healthy last year. They got a ton of talent. They got Desmond Bane. They should be in the mix. And then the Atlanta Hawks. I mean, I go back, and I know it's a long time ago at this point, but Trae Young showed me something in those 2021 playoffs. And they got Kristaps Porzingis. They made some moves. They got some guys healthy. So I think the Atlanta Hawks are a team I'm going to watch in the East.
Hey, James, is that Popper back there being so loud? You tell him to quiet
Can you
down.
tell him to stop?
I can't tell who it is because I'm like in the back, so I didn't want to even bother. But I don't think he might be here. I can I hear Daniel. Do I hear Daniel Jones talk? Yeah, I think that is.
That's Popper. That's Popper.
It's either him or Fooch.
Yeah, it's one of those two. I agree with Steph. I think those two, and I'm going to throw Detroit in there too. I think Cade has a chance to be a top 5 player in the East this year, and they gave New York a run for their money. Only a year wiser. I like that group as well. They might have the best balance of the Atlanta, Orlando, Detroit trio. I think they can get after it defensively and score some points offensively too.
It's a great point about the Pistons. And Atlanta to me looks great on paper. Obviously health always matters, but defensively, if they're healthy, I mean, that's a strong team. Jalen Johnson wasn't even around for most of last season, and he's back. So that they're going to be a tough out, I believe, for sure. And
can I hijack this for a second? Can I ask you guys a question?
Sure.
You guys know Mr. I'm going to say it quietly because we think there's microphones in here. You guys know Mr. Dolan's temperament better than me. Mm. And I've been in a situation where a coach got a nice contract and was fired after a year. Mm. Is there any world where if this team flames out in the first round that they would change the coach, or would they go to the front office first?
They go to coach first, is my opinion.
Yeah, I would think the only reason I'm saying coach first is because I think that the roster has been there's enough equity there with the front office and how things have been built out that the easy fix is the coach. But that's a lot of money to swallow. Tom Thibodeau still getting paid $30+ million on the deal that he has. There will be big changes if that's the case, if it's a first round flameout. So James, you bring up a good point because expectations are as high as they can be. So something will change and it will be big if that's the case. It's hard for me to say whether it's the coach or the front office.
I was just curious. Go ahead, Steph. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, if there's a first round flame out, the only thing you can point to is the coaching change, because that's really the only thing that changed other than the bench. And the bench has supposedly been upgraded. So, yeah, I think it would fall squarely on the coach.
But then when will we point to who made the decision to change the coach to? I'm just curious because, like, we talk about, like, I think we've all agreed that they're going to get to the Eastern Conference Finals, but I didn't think Detroit would lose less than 17 games when Monty Williams won them 14 games, and he got fired, right? So,
here's your mistake, James. Here's your mistake. You're trying to get us to get in James Dolan's head. It's not going to work. We have no idea.
You guys have a better shot than I, so that's why I brought it up.
I'm a long time observer, but I could not guess. Could not be the first to guess that what he would react to and what would matter. I just know there would be changes, but we're going to finish, I think, on a positive note. James, I want to hear from you. Win total. What do you got?
So I think that they won 51 last year. I think Vegas has them at 54.5. I have them somewhere again in that range of like 51 to 54. That doesn't mean that they're not going to be better positioned to make a run in the playoffs. I just think that they got 51 wins by playing their best players significantly more than other teams played their best players. And I think naturally when you play the bench more, there's going to be some downers throughout the course of a season. So I think there's a high chance they're well prepared for a deep playoff run. But I think there's an equal chance that their regular season win total isn't much higher, if at all.
It makes sense to me. And I think we lost Steph, but we're going to leave it there. James, thank you so much. This was fantastic. James Edwards of The Athletic. Certainly, I'm sure you already subscribed, but go subscribe to The Athletic if you haven't already. And similar, Stefan Bondy, New York Post, Post Plus. These guys are giving you great insight, great information day to day on the Knicks. And for us, here on the Putback. We will be back soon after the first game of the regular season, but Putback presented by Fanatics Sportsbook. We're actually going to be back on Monday, to react to the roster moves the Knicks made over the weekend. So be sure to check us out then, and thank you for being with us.